Noah's consciousness floated through darkness, drifting endlessly. As he floated, he thought, what do people think about when they drown? The good memories? The bad ones? For him, it was neither. He couldn't even remember his own name. There was nothing but darkness, until a faint glimmer appeared. He felt his existence again, like he was being pulled by a string, barely aware of himself. Suddenly, his soul was thrust into countless lives. Worlds flashed by in a blur, each one rejecting him. Each time he was thrown out, flying through the void again, searching for a body to contain him. Over and over, he was reborn. Then he stopped. He flew into a small clearing surrounded by trees, their branches stretching into the sky like withered hands. To his surprise, there wasn't a child or a mother waiting there. Instead, a greasy-haired man knelt on the ground. The man was panting, struggling for breath. He pulled a small gourd from his belt, broke the seal, and drank greedily. But halfway through, the man's eyes bulged in horror. He clutched his throat, dropping the bottle as liquid spilled to the ground. His consciousness faded, and Noah felt his soul being pulled into the man's body. Finally, Noah thought, I found a body that could hold me. He gasped, desperate for air, and it worked. Noah froze, his hands slowly rising to his face. He touched his skin, no longer a ghost. I'm alive, he said, his voice trembling with disbelief. A burst of hysterical laughter escaped him. Tears ran down his cheeks. It had been so long since he'd had a body. Noah, that was my name, he muttered, fragments of memory returning. Earth, the stars, and a feeling of impatience all jumbled together in his mind. I thought I was supposed to lose all my memories when I was reborn, Noah said. Why do I feel like I've been waiting for something for so long? But what? Looking around, he realized he didn't know where he was. Where am I? Who am I? He paused, noticing a strange taste in his mouth. Did this guy just drink poison? He crawled over to the gourd the man had been drinking from and picked it up. There was a small piece of parchment tied to it. To Noah's surprise, he could read the strange writing on it perfectly. Thanks for everything, Magus Vermil. I hope this healing potion helps you out. Noah frowned, judging by the man's expression before he died. It seemed the potion had done more harm than good. I'll worry about that later, Noah muttered. Around him, the corpses of strange, furry creatures lay scattered. They looked like monkeys, but they had large fangs and long claws. These things didn't make the wound in Vermil's chest, Noah muttered, inspecting the man's body. Whatever did this, I hope it's long gone. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. Drool dripped onto Noah's head. He turned around, coming face to face with an enormous, grotesque monkey. It screeched, a horrible sound that tore through Noah's ears. The monster stood twice as tall as Noah, with long, gangly arms and clawed hands. Its small, beady eyes glared at him, and jagged fangs jutted out from its mouth in every direction. What the hell is that? Noah thought, frozen with fear. The creature charged at him, and he turned to run. Where did I get reborn? He wondered, hearing the heavy thumps of the monster's steps closing in behind him. Panic gripped him as he realized it was gaining on him. Am I going to die again? After just coming back to life? No, he turned to fight. As the monster's claw came rushing toward his head, panic surged through Noah. But before he could think, his body moved on its own. His hands rose into the air, and white lines danced before him, forming a strange pattern. A burst of wind shot from his palms, slamming into the monster's paw. Noah stumbled, feeling drained as the energy left him. He stared at his hands, stunned. I just did magic, he whispered. I can do... Before he could finish, the monster's other claw came down, slashing through his head. Pain exploded in his mind, and his soul was ripped from his body once more. His lifeless corpse crumpled to the ground. Floating above his body, Noah stared down at the mangled remains. The pain faded now that he had no body to feel it. Well, that was fast, Noah muttered. Getting killed that quickly has to be some kind of record. As his soul floated away, memories came flooding back. What happened after my last life? I remember, Noah said. I always believed there was something after death, but I never expected it would involve waiting in a line. A very long line leading somewhere unknown. Noah noticed a faint, purple crack in the distance and realized it hadn't been there before. This place is so boring, I'm starting to imagine things, he thought. All he could do here was imagine and reflect on his life, not that it had been remarkable. He'd never married, never had kids, and never got the chance to grow old. His degree felt useless, but he loved teaching music. There were moments with his students that he didn't want to forget, but fate had its own plans. The same job I loved forced my colleagues to give me their sick days just so I wouldn't get fired, he thought bitterly. And in the end, it hadn't mattered. Years passed, hundreds, maybe thousands, and Noah lost track of time as he moved forward, one step whenever the line allowed. Eventually, he started climbing a set of stairs, continuing his journey upward until he finally reached the top. He now found himself before a beautiful woman. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen, dressed in flowing silk, with a lake of shimmering silver water behind her. She wasn't human. He could tell that much instantly. The woman looked at him and spoke. Noah Vines, she said, as if reading from something invisible. You died at the age of 26. You were an influential figure to 84 of your students. Many prayers have been sent up for you. Well, at least my life wasn't a total waste, Noah thought. On the contrary, yours was a life well lived, the woman said. Are you a god? Noah asked. I am Renewal, she replied, one of the goddesses of reincarnation. Drink from the waters of life, and in losing the memories of your current life, continue to your next. A new body will soon be born for you. Wait, I won't remember anything? Noah had asked. But before she could answer, a shower of stars rained down, tearing the peaceful scene apart. Noah had no idea what was happening. Out of nowhere, a muscular man appeared. Renewal, my beautiful flower. I've missed you, the man said. He then started to dash towards her. You must enjoy being defeated, Renewal said as she prepared to defend herself. The man swung his weapon at Renewal, and upon impact, the ground shook as they clashed. The man managed to slice through Renewal's shield, cutting her arm, and her blood spilled into the water. Noah knew he had to escape. He threw himself forward, desperate to get away from the battle of gods raging nearby. Is that all, Renewal? The man taunted. Try harder if you want me to take this seriously, Renewal replied. For you? With pleasure, the man said, vanishing and reappearing in front of Renewal, swinging his weapon. Renewal managed to dodge and cut off the man's arm, which fell into the water. Watching from a distance, Noah realized he couldn't waste time worrying about losing his memories. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The muscular man growled in fury, his blood mixing with Renewal's as both spilled into the water. Seizing the moment, Noah ran while the gods prepared to clash again. With a determined look, he muttered that he was done with waiting. When the gods collided behind him, the force flung Noah into the water. As he sank, he accidentally swallowed some of the blood that had spread from the fight, Renewal's blood and the blood of her opponent. Back in the present, Noah's soul soared through the air. Do I have to wait in that line again? Is it still there? He wondered, but before he could think further, something yanked him down. A purple ribbon wrapped around his throat, pulling him back into the world. His eyes flew open as he gasped for breath, clutching his chest with his heart racing. He was alive again. What the hell is going on? Noah muttered, looking around in confusion. Noah found himself trapped in an endless cycle of death. He had died dozens, possibly hundreds of times, and each death blurred into the next. Every time he returned, it was to the same spot, back near the mysterious gourd. The agony was nearly unbearable, but it was still preferable to the monotonous hell of the endless line he had once been stuck in. Eventually, he managed to retrieve Vermil's belongings, but his magic never fully returned. He could still sense it deep within him, lurking in the foggy corners of his mind, but it remained just out of reach. Despite this, with each death came valuable experience. Noah couldn't explain why, but the monkeys he fought always used the same few attacks. Over time, he learned the exact way their muscles tensed before they lunged, the subtle shifts in their eyes that betrayed their movements, and how they telegraphed their claw strikes. Though he wasn't stronger or faster than before, he grew more adept at avoiding their blows, and he wasn't about to waste the chance to learn from each encounter. He had spent millennia waiting in that torturous line, and now his patience had finally run out. He prepared to fight another monkey. The monkeys continued their relentless assault, but Noah dodged their attacks effortlessly, refusing to let them best him yet again. It didn't matter how many times they killed him, he thought. He only needed to kill them once. Noah noticed a group of men flying through the air on swords. Seizing the opportunity, he called out for help, hoping they would hear him. Spotting him, one of the men expressed shock at his condition, asking what had happened. Noah couldn't afford to tell the truth. He didn't know what Vermil had been doing here or even who he was. He quickly made up a story, claiming that a monkey had struck him on the head, leaving his memories scrambled. He introduced himself as Vermil, unsure if the lie would hold up. The men looked at each other, then got ready to attack. Noah hastily showed them a badge, hoping it would prove his identity. One of the men, recognizing the badge, remarked that Noah, now Vermil, was a teacher at Arbitage. They wondered aloud if a Hellreaver had been responsible for his condition, but quickly dismissed the idea since Noah was still alive. It was more likely, they concluded, that he had been attacked by a lesser creature. One of the men, named Frederick, offered Noah a ride back to Arbitage. As Noah cautiously stepped onto the back of Frederick's flying sword, he asked if it was safe. Frederick reassured him and told him to hold on tightly as they soared through the sky. As they flew, Noah's thoughts raced. If Vermil had been a professor at Arbitage, then people there would surely know who he was. Whoever had tried to kill Vermil might even be among them. He realized he had to be careful, as he wasn't any safer now than he had been in the forest. But before long, they arrived at Arbitage City, home to one of the greatest runic academies on the continent. Frederick welcomed Noah back, calling him Professor, as they landed. Despite the danger, Noah thought that this situation could work in his favor. A magical academy was the perfect place to blend in and perhaps even learn the magic he was missing. All he had to do was stick to his story about memory loss and avoid drawing too much attention to himself. Frederick reassured him that he was in good hands at the academy and that if anyone could help him, it would be the people here. Noah silently worried, though, that if they discovered he wasn't really Vermil, he might end up being experimented on for eternity. A man slowly approached them, his expression skeptical. He commented on hearing rumors about Vermil's return, adding that he thought Noah had simply been absent, perhaps deliberately. Noah immediately sensed something off in the man's tone, finding it almost condescending. Internally, he bristled at the insinuation but responded aloud with an excuse about memory loss, mentioning an injury to his head. The man looked at him more closely, noting his injured appearance and questioning whether Noah even remembered who he was. Feeling put on the spot, Noah took a guess, asking if the man was a doctor. This only earned him an exasperated sigh and a comment that made it clear his guess was far from the truth. The man introduced himself as Richard, explaining that he specialized in healing runes. Moving with practiced intent, Richard placed his hand on Noah's chest, ready to investigate the supposed injury. Noah's thoughts raced, fearing that Richard's magic might reveal his true identity. Just as Frederick seemed ready to say something, Richard cut him off, muttering that Noah was human. Richard added, with a note of suspicion, that he was merely probing Noah's condition and remarked on how oddly jumbled his mind seemed. Trying to keep his voice steady, Noah suggested that rest was probably all he needed to recover from the memory issues, even though inwardly he worried if Richard might somehow detect that the real Magus Vermil was long gone. Richard, however, seemed unconvinced, stating that only time would reveal if further recovery was possible, and remarked on the situation as tragic. Noah's suspicions about Richard deepened. He couldn't help but wonder if this man, with his disdainful attitude, might have been involved in poisoning Vermil. After thanking Frederick for escorting Noah, Richard assured him that his efforts would not go unrewarded. Frederick replied that any honorable man would have done the same and wished the Magus luck. Richard then informed Noah that he would notify the headmaster of his return and his current condition. Observing Noah's hesitance when asked if he remembered his room, Richard sighed, resigned to leading him there personally. Once they arrived at the room, Richard inquired about Noah's key. Noah only shrugged, unable to produce it. Muttering to himself, Richard activated a rune to override the lock. As the door opened, they saw the room in disarray, with papers scattered across the floor. Richard stated that he would arrange for someone to check on Noah soon and suggested he stay in the room until then. Noah thought to himself that Vermil certainly wasn't a clean freak as he noticed the mess around him. Richard had just left, slamming the door on his way out. Noah couldn't shake the feeling that Richard knew more than he let on. Looking around the cluttered room, Noah muttered, "What a mess." His attention was drawn to a key left on the table. Puzzled, he wondered why Vermil would leave it behind. He sat down, determined to make some sense of the clutter. "So I'm a teacher again. I can work with that," he mused, spotting a note apparently written for a student. The message read, "Meet me in my room an hour after class if you want that extension." Shocked, Noah slammed the note back down. The last bloke in this body was a creep. No wonder someone killed him, he muttered in disgust. Glancing over a schedule on the desk, he noted, "And he was a magic teacher? How am I supposed to teach magic if I can't even do it myself? This is a mess." Just then, a knock came at the door, and a man's voice called out, "Hello?" Noah turned as the man barged in, introducing himself as Braden. "Vermil? It's Braden. I heard you were back. What happened out there?" he asked. Noah, improvising, replied that he'd taken a bad hit and was dealing with some memory loss. Braden scoffed, "Idiot. Can't say I didn't warn you. Just how bad is that memory loss? The Linwicks would be furious if you got injured and didn't receive proper treatment." Noah was relieved Braden didn't seem hostile, especially considering his intimidating physique. Braden informed Noah he had a class in an hour, offering to find a substitute if his memory loss was too severe. Noah started to accept the offer, but Braden interrupted, insisting they could also get someone to examine him more thoroughly. He mentioned he'd be leaving later that day and wouldn't be around for a few months, so he couldn't cover for him. Noah quickly thought, "The last thing I want is someone rummaging around in my mind." He assured Braden, No, that's all right. I can handle it, just a little memory loss." "Where's my class again?" Braden eyed him with exasperation. "Gods, has it been that long since you actually taught? Building a room 2. Don't be late. And remember, if your students flunk out, it'll reflect badly on the Linwicks. I trust you still remember what that means." With that, he slammed the door behind him. "Right, thanks. I wouldn't miss it for the world," Noah replied. As he gathered himself, his eyes fell on a paper on the floor that read, "Face stealer group spotted in the area." It warned that persons should be wary of colleagues or students that they recognize that speak or move in an odd manner, especially those who have been missing for an extended period. Meanwhile, back in the forest, a shadowy figure stood in the fog, dragging one of the bodies Noah had left behind. Noah was sprinting through the campus, cursing under his breath. "Damn it, I'm late," he muttered, frustrated by the labyrinthine layout. "This campus is a maze," he grumbled, hoping his students wouldn't decide to leave if he wasn't there in the first 15 minutes. Bursting through a door, he glanced around, uncertain. "Is this it?" he wondered aloud, taking in the neglected classroom. "Looks like no one's taught here for ages. And why is my classroom so far out here?" He caught his breath, huffing repeatedly, realizing he hadn't seen a single student or teacher on his way over. "I wonder if there's anything useful in here," he said, scanning the room. A light tapping of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. "Someone's coming," he whispered, as a girl walked in, holding a blue orb and looking surprised. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I believe I'm here to teach class," he replied, hoping he sounded convincing. Just then, another student entered, glancing curiously at the girl. "Who are you talking to, Isabel?" he asked, only to freeze in shock at the sight of Noah. "Whoa, I've never seen him show up for class." Noah stared back, incredulous. "These are my students?" he thought, surprised at how close they were to his own age. The boy nudged Isabel, smirking. "Do you even think he knows class started 40 minutes ago?" Isabel scoffed. He probably thought he'd have the room to himself. Trying to keep his composure, Noah thought, "Just gotta play it cool, not give myself away. I can win over a couple of students," he said confidently, determined to make the best of the situation. With a forced smile, Noah told them they were going to have an amazing class. Isabel was immediately suspicious, asking him what he was trying to pull. Noah denied any hidden agenda, insisting that he was just there to teach. Isabel and the boy, Todd, exchanged glances, commenting that Noah seemed different from how he usually acted. Noah explained his odd behavior, telling them he had taken a blow to the head and was suffering from minor memory loss. But he still had a class to teach, and he instructed them to sit down, as it seems that the rest of the class wasn't coming. He noted inwardly, with a mischievous grin, that he would be getting answers to all his questions from these students. Todd told Noah that there was no rest of the class. It was just him and Isabel. They were the only two students stuck with Noah. Undeterred, Noah told them that two students were better than none and asked them to take their seats. The two students were skeptical. Todd pointed out that they were the same rank as Noah, and Isabel scoffed at the idea that Noah was going to try and teach them. Todd remarked that Noah only had the job because of his connection to the Linwick family, a powerful name that Noah had heard mentioned several times before. Isabel tried to strike a deal, suggesting that if Noah gave them a free pass on the exam, they'd stay out of his way. Todd chimed in, hoping Noah would let things slide as they had been before. Noah, however, was firm. Despite being untalented, he suggested that perhaps he had some experience they lacked. Isabel arrogantly dismissed the idea, but Noah wasn't backing down. He had their attention for the rest of the class, and he intended to use it. The students tried to challenge him, bringing up some scandal involving a student he had seduced, but he cut them off, asserting his authority as their teacher. While he understood why they didn't respect him, considering Vermal's reputation, he demanded that they treat him with the respect due to a teacher. With that, he turned to the blackboard and announced that they would be talking about runes. As if to punctuate his statement, the class board broke down with a crash, much to Noah's surprise. Regaining his composure, Noah asked the students what runes were, but his students were unimpressed. Todd gave a basic, almost mocking definition of a rune, stating that it held energy and allowed someone to cast magic. Noah, however, wasn't satisfied. He pointed out that the definition Todd gave was the most worthless possible. He wasn't asking what a rune did. He wanted to know what it was. The students were taken aback by his response, unsure of what he meant. Noah seized the opportunity, feeling smug as he realized that neither of them truly understood the basics. He explained that to properly use a tool, one must understand it at its most fundamental level. Neither Todd nor Isabel could answer his question, admitting they didn't really know what a rune actually was. Noah praised their honesty, telling them that understanding begins with realizing what you don't know. He then asked them what magic could do, to which Isabel replied, "Anything." Noah challenged her, asking if magic really had no limits. Todd quickly chimed in, mentioning that you could only use one rune at a time and that it couldn't bring people back to life. Noah agreed, noting that magic had its limits, and emphasized the importance of understanding the building blocks of their craft. In his mind, Noah thought that magic could definitely bring people back to life. Todd looked at Noah in disbelief, struggling to comprehend. Nobody truly understood runes, yet Noah seemed to suggest otherwise. In response, Noah simply remarked that runes remained largely a mystery and a topic of continual study. He added that anyone claiming full knowledge was either lying or delusional, then turned to the board and began sketching a rune. The faint scratching sound filled the room as he drew, emphasizing that there was always more to learn. Todd and Isabel watched in shock. Todd, eyes wide, questioned if the rune was Noah's own, to which Noah replied that it was indeed a rune. Their astonishment grew as they realized he'd drawn it right before them, exclaiming in disbelief. Noah, realizing he may have overstepped, explained that it had been in his book, quietly acknowledging to himself that he shouldn't have revealed it so openly. Todd, still incredulous, asked if they were allowed to see it without any cost. Isabel muttered to herself, suggesting Noah might have indeed hit his head. Noah kept his composure, responding that a teacher's duty was to inform, though he knew he had to proceed carefully in questioning them. He then asked if they could identify the rune, prompting a response that it was a rank 1 lesser fire rune. The mention of ranks surprised Noah, who began writing on the board as he sought clarification on what made it a lesser rune. Todd eagerly explained that lesser runes couldn't hold as much magic, had poorer control than greater ones, and were overall weaker. Still, he argued, lesser runes weren't necessarily ineffective and proceeded to launch a flame that shot through the ceiling. Noah encouraged Todd with a nod, though internally he was panicking. Clearing his throat, he asked the class if anyone could now define a rune, but the students remained silent. He continued, emphasizing that acknowledging one's ignorance was the first step to understanding, urging them to speculate on a rune's purpose if they had no concrete answers. Todd suggested that runes could be combined and used to imbue items, though he sounded unsure. When Noah pointed this out, Todd admitted he hadn't expected an interrogation. Noah assured him with a slight smile that he'd adjust to it, assigning them the task of thinking about a rune's composition for next class. Turning to Isabel, Noah inquired about her method of accessing her runes. She hesitantly explained that she imagined sinking into her soul, but wasn't sure if there was more to it. Noah encouraged her to explore this further, inviting her to focus on her runes and observe what occurred, promising to do the same. As Todd and Isabel closed their eyes, Noah joined them in trying to connect with his own runes. Internally, he reflected that finding magic within his soul shouldn't be difficult, despite lacking meditation experience. Suddenly, he sensed a shimmer and found himself surrounded by familiar runes, 5 wind runes and 2 ash ones. Recalling Todd's mention of combining runes, he likened it to harmonizing notes but remained acutely aware of his limited knowledge. Without warning, a sharp headache jolted him as a massive purple rune appeared behind him. Stunned, he whispered in shock at the sight of what seemed to be an 8th rune. The image stirred a distant memory, reminding him of the man who was fighting renewal. A few hours after class, Noah was in deep concentration. Focusing hard, he pictured the rune in his mind, visualizing the magic he wanted to summon. Slowly, he felt it activate. Excitement washed over him as he realized his runes were working again. His enthusiasm was quickly tempered when he wobbled, feeling drained. He reminded himself that all energy, even magic, had its limits. Still, the rush of progress thrilled him. There was so much left to learn, but at least he was on the right track. Later, Noah walked through town, trying to avoid the stares and whispers of those around him. It was impossible to go anywhere without feeling eyes on him, but as long as he looked like he was in a hurry, he hoped no one would stop him for conversation. He noticed the wary glances people gave him and was relieved no one seemed ready to confront him, at least not yet. As he passed, students murmured behind his back, heightening his anxiety about Vermil's reputation. The memory of the note Vermil had written to a student lingered in his mind, making him wonder if someone might still be out there, waiting to finish the job on Vermil. Approaching the library, Noah pushed the door open, immediately struck by how much nicer it was compared to his classroom. He marveled at the grand space, wondering why his own workspace was so neglected in comparison. Spotting the professor-only section, Noah figured that was exactly where he needed to be. Joking to himself, he wondered if professors here got free coffee too. Noah approached an old man behind the counter, asking for some books. When the man inquired about the kind of books he was looking for, Noah requested something basic, an introduction to runes. Before the man could respond, a woman approached, clearly unimpressed. She scorned Noah, stating that the Linwick family had clearly fallen far if he was seeking such basic knowledge. Her contempt was evident as she questioned why Noah wasn't using his family's resources to find what he needed. Noah, quick on his feet, responded that using Linwick resources for something so mundane would be a waste. He pointed out that everything he needed was available in the library. This answer seemed to catch her off guard, but she wasn't entirely convinced. She mocked him, saying it was no surprise he was looking for beginner-level books. In her eyes, the fact that he was a professor at rank 1 was pathetic. The woman's finger sparked with magic as she shot a spell at Noah, insinuating that his previous misdeeds, blowing girls' skirts up with his magic, weren't easily forgotten. The old man, alarmed, tried to stop her, but it was too late. Noah fell, realizing that Vermil had been a detested figure. No wonder everyone hated him. He struggled to think of a way to respond, but all he could muster was a brief apology, claiming he was trying to move on from old, poor habits. Moxy sneered at Noah, dismissing him with a taunt, saying no one would be foolish enough to believe him. She added that he probably fit right in with his family's reputation, casting him as a disgrace. Noah felt a sting but kept his focus. She clearly disliked him and seemed interested in these face-stealers. Reflecting on Vermil's personality, Noah mused that Vermil might have deserved her attitude. He even considered that she might have been the one who tried to kill him. Shifting the conversation, Noah whispered to the old man about the books. The scene switched to Vermil's room, where Noah sat at the table, pondering the workings of his runes. That massive rune still loomed in his mind, something he felt was far from ordinary. But he knew that drawing attention to it would be risky. He delved deeper, wondering why Vermil, who came from a moderately powerful family, possessed a bunch of low-quality lesser wind runes. For someone of his background, better runes would be expected. The thought led Noah to reconsider his own runes. 5 wind runes and 2 ash runes. Despite both being wind runes, they felt distinct, as though each were a separate vessel or power source. The more energy they contained, the stronger they became. Killing monsters had somehow filled these vessels with energy, an effect he'd noticed back in the forest. He realized that even nearly empty, the ash runes held more power than his nearly full wind runes. This understanding fueled his resolve. If he wanted to grow stronger, he'd need to replace his lesser runes, fill them with energy, and explore how to combine them. Feeling a surge of confidence, Noah decided to test his wind rune. He stacked up a bunch of papers, activating the rune. He managed to cut through the stack. Wind magic was starting to make sense to him. He even wondered if he could fly once he fully mastered it. However, when he tried to channel the ash rune, it remained unresponsive. Frustrated but undeterred, he decided to focus on what was working for now. An idea struck him. He could use wind magic to clean up the mess in his room. With his rune, the scattered papers fluttered into piles. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. He could feel one of his wind runes draining as he used it, further solidifying his understanding of how rune energy worked. Exhausted from the day's events, Noah decided it was time to rest. After cleaning up, he headed for a warm, relaxing bath before bed. The comfort of the bath eased his mind as he contemplated the mysteries surrounding his runes and Vermil's life. Afterward, he rummaged through Vermil's closet, finding nothing but the same set of clothes. At least Vermil had been consistent in his fashion choices, Noah mused. As he brushed his teeth, there was a sudden knock at the door. Startled, Noah considered ignoring it, hoping the visitor would assume he was asleep. But the knocking persisted, growing louder and more urgent. Panic set in. What if it was Vermil's killer, coming back to finish the job? Noah's mind raced. Had he locked the door? The thought barely formed before the door was busted open. Terrified, Noah hid as the intruder slipped on the scattered papers and crashed to the floor. Noah cautiously crawled out of his hiding spot and checked the person's pulse, fearing the worst. To his horror, he didn't feel anything. Was the intruder dead? He began to panic, convinced that others would think he had killed the person. As he was grappling with what to do next, Moxy entered the room. Noah, desperate to explain, blurted out that it wasn't what it looked like. Noah, feeling the weight of the situation, tried to explain himself. He knew Moxy didn't like him and he understood why, but he insisted that she had to believe him. He didn't do it. Moxy, however, was more focused on the body in front of them. She was impressed that Noah had killed it, which confused him. She referred to the girl as it, which took Noah by surprise. When he pressed for an explanation, Moxy seemed almost amused, asking if he was trying to be funny. Noah was bewildered by how calm she was, wondering why she was acting like this was just a normal situation. He asked for clarification, wanting to know who the person was. Moxy called him an idiot, opening a bottle of liquor before revealing that the it in question was a face stealer, shocking Noah. Noah, curious, asked Moxy what a face stealer was. Moxy replied sharply, accusing him of ignoring the warning that had been sent out. As he recalled a note he'd skimmed in a stack of papers, she questioned how he'd even known to kill it if he hadn't realized what it was. Noah sheepishly admitted that it had slipped and essentially killed itself. Moxy took a drink, calling him a lucky fool as she settled in comfortably. Noah thought to himself that she certainly made herself at home. Continuing, he asked if a face stealer meant it had taken over someone's body. Moxy confirmed, explaining that it probably belonged to an irrelevant person like a maid. Noah wondered aloud if the original person could have survived, to which Moxy clarified that the host had already been dead, reminding him that face stealers could only inhabit dead bodies. Noah internally noted the need to be cautious with any bodies he left behind. Moxy mentioned that it was strange for a face stealer to come after him in his room, as they were typically drawn to magic, and no one was reckless enough to use it indoor as they could damage the property. Noah winced internally, recalling that he'd been practicing magic earlier. Moxy then requested that he keep the whole ordeal private, as she couldn't bear the embarrassment of a face stealer slipping past her, only to be taken down by him. Smirking, Noah agreed, but not for free, which immediately offended her. He quickly clarified that he only wanted to ask questions, explaining that the blow to his head had left him with fuzzy memories. He genuinely needed help filling in the gaps in his memory. He realized too late that his phrasing had sounded incredibly creepy, especially given Vermill's notorious reputation. Moxy, still irritated but willing to help, gave him 10 minutes to ask his questions. Noah's first concern was about the monsters at the academy. He asked why there were monsters on the school grounds when it was supposed to be safe. Moxy explained that while it was safer at the academy, it wasn't entirely safe. Face stealers were a recent problem, but far from the worst threat they had faced. Monsters, much like humans, were drawn to runes and the energy they held. Noah, curious, asked if the energy they gained from killing monsters was what attracted them. Moxy confirmed that monsters also craved the power stored in runes, noting that the exchange of energy went both ways. She added that some monsters carried master runes, which were far more powerful. As Moxy threw a handful of seeds onto the body of the face stealer, vines sprouted and enveloped the corpse, absorbing it entirely. Noah watched in awe, taken aback by the sheer power of her magic. Moxy, unimpressed by Noah's ignorance, chastised him for asking such basic questions, ones that even a child would know the answers to. Noah explained that his memory was fuzzy due to the head injury, trying to downplay the gaps in his knowledge. Moxy mocked him further, teasing that even face stealers were smarter than him. Noah ignored the insult, pressing on with his next question. He asked if there were any monsters with master runes nearby. As Moxy walked around the room, she said that she hopes not, and told him that the monsters vary in strength, but the strongest ones could likely level Arbitage. She said that the closest is the Hellreaver, and it could pound him into paste. It was a rank 2 monster, possibly approaching rank 3 with a master rune. Noah made a mental note to avoid that creature at all costs. Noah wondered aloud why none of their books mentioned anything about creating new runes. Moxy replied skeptically, saying that if the Linwicks had figured out rune-making, she'd be interested to know. She then teased Noah, questioning why he'd even ask with all his research documented in his grimoire, though she hinted that she found his research less than impressive. At the mention of a grimoire, Noah recalled Vermil's book and thought he needed to examine it more closely. Curious, Noah asked if runes could be learned just by studying a drawn symbol. Moxy explained that a drawn rune alone was powerless. While runes stored energy, they also needed an energy source to begin storing anything. Noah likened it to needing an initial investment to get started, comparing it to jump-starting a car. Moxy nodded in agreement, clarifying that creating a rune within one's soul required both the rune's energy and its drawing, hence why runes and rune combinations were guarded secrets. Knowing how to combine runes safely was crucial, as it could otherwise lead to devastating consequences. Satisfied, Noah moved on to a final question, asking Moxy if she knew of anyone who disliked him. Moxy wryly suggested that it would be simpler to list those who did like him. Amused, Noah accepted her answer and promised to keep their conversation confidential. Moxy seemed surprised by his straightforwardness but accepted his promise, remarking that the debt was settled as they shook hands. She then teased that she thought he'd ask her advice about the upcoming class exams, but Noah assured her he would manage. As Moxy left, Noah mentally added the exams to his growing list of research tasks. She gave him a final warning, reminding him not to mention the face stealer incident and hinting at unpleasant consequences if he forgot. With a dramatic slam of the door, she advised him not to test her. The scene then shifted to Noah as he approached a towering building. Looking up, he muttered to himself, realizing that this was the place. He'd overheard professors discussing a magical public transit system, but it wasn't quite what he'd expected. Nonetheless, he resolved to press on, entering the building and climbing the stairs up to the 30th floor. After the long climb, he finally reached a room housing the transport cannon. An old man greeted Noah cheerfully, asking where he wanted to go. Surveying the cannon, Noah found it less than confidence-inspiring, yet he asked the man to send him to the Scorched Acres. The old man asked if he was heading out there for teaching, to which Noah replied vaguely. The man noted that it was good Noah had chosen the cannon this time, reminding him that he had tried to warn him about it last month. It guaranteed a 24-hour return. Noah admitted that ignoring that advice had cost him a concussion, and he wondered quietly about Vermil's motives for venturing there, as it had ultimately cost him his life. Noah then asked if the cannon was indeed safe. The old man confidently assured him it was and urged him into the cannon, mentioning that there was a bit of a line waiting, though it was usually quiet. Once inside, Noah hesitated, asking what he should do next. The man simply instructed him to squeeze. As the cannon powered up, Noah started to panic, shouting that he didn't think this was safe and begging to be let out. Amused, the old man reminded him that he usually enjoyed this part. As Noah braced himself, he mused that, even if the cannon did kill him, at least he'd come back. But maybe he should have left his gourd behind. With a triumphant shout of up, up, and away, the old man fired Noah out of the cannon. At the Linwick estate, Braden entered a dimly lit room to speak with his father. Standing in the shadows, his father asked about Vermil. Braden explained that Vermil had been acting strangely, but his father didn't seem surprised, calling it an improvement from Vermil's usual displeasing self. Braden tried to offer an optimistic view, suggesting that perhaps Vermil was getting closer to completing his mission, but his father doubted it. Regardless, he added coldly, Vermil would serve his purpose, both in life and in death. Meanwhile, Noah was soaring through the air, his body surrounded by blue energy, as he hurtled toward the Scorched Acres. Just before hitting the ground, the energy dissipated, and Noah dropped face-first into the dirt. Frustrated, he muttered that the cannon was far from perfectly safe. As he got up and started walking, Noah surveyed the burnt and dead landscape, commenting on how nothing had changed since his last visit. He reminded himself that he had nothing to fear. Pain was temporary, and the cannon would bring him back in 24 hours. With determination, he thought that by the time he was done, the monsters here would learn to fear him. He ventured deeper into the forest, feeling it was deserted enough to practice safely. Struggling to climb up a tree, Noah reached the top and was relieved that no one had witnessed his less than graceful ascent. Taking out Vermeil's grimoire, he flipped through its pages, searching for something more interesting than wind magic. Vermeil had amassed a vast collection of runes, nearly 100, but Noah wanted something unique. He dismissed the flame rune as too basic, the plant rune after recalling his disastrous attempt at caring for a succulent, and the shadow rune for being too edgy. Water, light, electricity, and metal all were rejected. He needed something that would allow him to apply his knowledge from Earth. Even though he didn't remember much about building nuclear weapons or complex chemicals, Noah was a music teacher and knew that certain things resonated with him. Finally, he found what he was looking for: a greater vibration rune, rank 1. Vermeil had dismissed it as useless because it only shook things, but Noah saw potential. With strong enough vibrations, he could cause tremors, quakes, and resonant frequencies, possibly even bringing structures down. This was the angle he had been searching for. Noah decided to replace one of his wind runes with the vibration rune. Although the ash runes were his strongest, he still didn't know how to use them, so he wasn't ready to mess with them yet. Carefully, he dismantled one of his smaller wind runes, watching as it slowly faded away. Then came the challenging part: rebuilding it into something better. Concentrating hard, he manipulated the particles from the old rune, shaping them into the new vibration rune. Finally, he succeeded in forming the rune, though it barely had any energy. For now, he would still rely on his wind runes. But with this new rune, it was time to hunt some monkeys and get a little revenge. Noah soon spotted a monkey feeding on the body of another. He called out to attract its attention, and as the monkey turned toward him, Noah activated his wind rune, swiftly chopping the monkey's head off. Pleased with his success, he frowned when he realized that the energy gained from killing the monkey barely filled his runes. Joking darkly, Noah hoped the monkeys weren't endangered, as he planned to kill many more. Perched in a tree, Noah scanned the area for his next target. He spotted a group of monkeys and noticed that one of them resembled the type that had killed him before. This would be the real test. Leaving his gourd in the tree, Noah observed the monkeys for a moment. It almost seemed like they were communicating, which unsettled him. But after a brief pause, Noah reminded himself that they had killed him first, and his anger returned. He attacked with his wind rune, quickly decapitating one smaller monkey and slicing another in two. The bigger monkey, however, remained standing. Noah taunted the large monkey, asking if those had been its friends or just its next meal. The monkey dashed toward him, and Noah launched another wind attack, but the creature dodged it easily. As it closed in on him, Noah fired off another blast, but the monkey dodged again. Frustrated, Noah realized that hitting a moving target was much harder than it seemed. The monkey was now face to face with him, slashing at him with its claws. Noah dodged the blow but stumbled, and the monkey leapt toward him to finish the job. Noah recognized the monkey's move from before, thinking it would slash with both hands just like the last one he had fought. He felt confident that he could predict its next attack. But as the creature descended on him, Noah found that even though he knew what was coming, he wasn't fast enough to react. His body crumpled as the monkey struck, and Noah's soul began to leave his body. Damn it, Noah thought as he hovered over his fallen form. I knew what it was going to do. I just wasn't fast enough to react in time. I need to keep training. Looking down at the scene, he saw the monkey approach his body. Oh God, no. Please stop that. Don't eat my face. That's disgusting, Noah said. 12 hours later, Noah walked back to face the monkey. He was well aware that each death brought with it a splitting headache, which also prevented him from using magic. Reflecting on this, he noted aloud that the headaches seemed to last about 12 hours. As he approached the monkey, he prepared himself to attack. The monkey shrieked in anger and leaped at him. Anticipating its moves, Noah thought about its usual attack patterns. When the monkey slashed at him from the sides, he ducked, dodging the attack. Then, as the monkey prepared for an overhead strike, Noah leaned to the side to avoid it with calm precision. Finally, as the monkey readied a horizontal attack, Noah struck first with his wind rune magic, decapitating it in one swift blow. Watching the body fall, he remarked that all the monkeys fought in the same predictable way, making his task much easier. Soon after, Noah returned to the transport cannon. The old man greeted him, starting to ask how the trip went, but was taken aback by Noah's battered appearance. "Is this really the best way to travel?" Noah asked, clearly worn out. The old man expressed concern, asking if he was okay, to which Noah reassured him that he was uninjured, though he had forgotten about the quick return. The old man winked and mentioned that Noah must have used quite a few healing potions. Noah simply agreed, thanking him. As he left, Noah mused that he'd bring a spare set of clothes next time. Noah sat in his classroom, waiting for his students, noting they were late as class had started several minutes ago. Hearing footsteps approach, he remarked to himself that at least they were earlier than the previous class. Progress. As Todd and Isabel entered, Todd confidently pointed out he knew Noah would be there, while Isabel, surprised, asked how he was so sure, since Noah hadn't shown up the day before. Todd dismissed her question, prompting her to pay up on their bet, which she did. Noah, curious, asked if they actually had class that day, wondering if he might have missed something by going out to Scorched Acres. Isabel clarified that class was every other day and had been scheduled for the previous day, which he'd missed. Noah asked why they were there, and Todd explained that they usually used the classroom as a hangout spot since it was generally empty. Apologizing for interrupting their hangout, Noah suggested that since they were all present, they might as well make up for the previous day's class, adding that learning together was a good way to spend time. Todd and Isabel fell silent. Noah cleared his throat and asked how their homework had gone. Todd admitted that he couldn't figure it out and had stress-eaten instead, while Isabel said she had thought about it but still didn't understand. She asked Noah to give them the answer. Noah, to their surprise, told them that he didn't know the answer either. He explained that if it were easy, they'd have the answer by now. It was something they had to figure out for themselves. Frustrated, Isabel asked Noah why he made them think about the answer if he didn't know it himself. Noah replied that she had answered her own question. It was to make them think, and thinking was never a waste of time. Turning to the board, he introduced the main question for the day, focusing on the importance of good runes. He asked if it was true that they were limited to 7 per level, and Todd and Isabel nodded. He asked what happened when they advanced to the next rank. Todd explained that they would try to combine all 7 runes into a single, stronger one. If successful, they could handle absorbing or combining more complex runes, progressing from general ones like fire or wind to specialized ones like frozen mist. However, Isabel warned that if the combination failed, the runes could shatter, leaving a person crippled until the soul healed, a process that could take years. She added that this was why effective combinations were closely guarded, and the intent behind the combination was crucial for success. The more one understood, the greater the chances. Noah reflected that Vermel's family likely had an impressive rune collection, though he doubted reaching out to them would be wise. After about 30 minutes, Noah wrapped up, summarizing that runes were like buckets, with lesser runes being smaller than greater ones. When all 7 were filled, they could merge into a larger, more capable rune. Todd and Isabel agreed with the analogy. Noah asked if that was all there was to runes, but they remained silent. He noted that they didn't need to answer yet, ending the class there to avoid overwhelming them. When they reconvened, he promised to continue the discussion. Todd and Isabel exchanged a look, with Isabel commenting on how drastically Noah seemed to have changed. Noah dismissed the remark, saying it was hardly relevant and that he actually liked himself now. Todd agreed, noting that Noah almost seemed respectable. Noah considered this to be progress. As the students began to leave, Noah stopped them with one last reminder, confirming their next class in 2 days. Isabel replied that if he insisted, it would indeed be in 2 days at the same time, addressing him as Professor. Noah thanked them and reminded them to be on time, since being late was his job. He added sternly that they should be prepared, as he wasn't done with either of them yet. A little later, as Noah walked out of the classroom, he held his head, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle in. He thought to himself that he needed a break, wondering if repeated death could cause this kind of fatigue. With a faint smirk, he mused, wishing he had WebMD to consult for answers. 2 days later, Noah sat at his desk, staring off into space as he reflected on the last few hours of his day. He still had some time before today's class, but the headaches from using magic had become a persistent annoyance. He wondered if it was from the strain of magic itself or the paranoia creeping in from knowing Vermeil's killer was still out there. As these thoughts swirled in his head, he caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure in the window behind him. Startled, he turned quickly, but there was nothing there. He muttered to himself, questioning whether it had just been a trick of the light or the result of too many sleepless nights. Shaking off the eerie feeling, Noah refocused. No matter, he said to himself. Let's see if yesterday's training made any difference. He activated his vibration rune, hoping to see some progress. Placing his hand on the desk, he felt it start to shake. Items scattered, and he scrambled to catch them before they fell. He hadn't expected it to work that well. Pleased but curious, he contemplated his other runes. If vibration and wind worked fine, then why was ash still giving him trouble? An idea popped into his head, and he grabbed a candle and some paper. Lighting the candle, he burned the paper, watching it turn to ash. Afterward, he activated the ash rune, grinning in excitement. He couldn't create ash, but he realized he could control it. How had he not noticed that before? Playing around with the ash, Noah came to a revelation. Runes didn't create elements, they controlled them. He decided to test his newfound control, gathering the ash and attempting to fire it at the candle. But nothing happened. Disappointed, he realized it was still just ash, and unlike wind, it didn't cut. Noah considered that the strength of a rune likely depended on the energy stored within it. This explained why Vermeil kept several weaker wind runes. It was easier for him to use those rather than focus on building up to the powerful ones. Fortunately, Noah had only discarded one wind rune. Otherwise, he might have been left without a reliable way to fight. But there was still the matter of the massive purple rune in front of him, and he didn't understand what it was. Unsure and hesitant, he thought it might be foolish to mess with it, given that he didn't even know how it worked. But the curiosity gnawed at him. Maybe just a touch. Floating closer, he reached out and touched the rune. A flash burst out, and suddenly, Noah saw the man who had been fighting with renewal earlier. The man approached a centipede-like creature, which lunged at him. With one powerful attack, the man split the creature in two. Runes poured from its body, and Noah was stunned as he watched the man pick up one of them. The rune was labeled Insectoid Armor. Noah's mind raced. If he could memorize the rune, could he replicate it? The man then shattered the rune. Noah realized he wasn't simply destroying it. He was splitting it apart. As the particles from the rune gathered once more, the man formed a new rune and presented it in his hand. Noah understood. The rune had revealed its function. Sunder, meaning to split. It had torn the monster into its components, but its power extended beyond that. It could also split runes. The realization thrilled Noah. Unlike typical rune combinations, which were like baking a cake where ingredients couldn't be unmixed, this power allowed him to uncombine and retrieve the original components intact. He could now test combinations infinitely, unafraid of locking them in place. Excitedly, Noah exclaimed, but then remembered the time. He was going to be late. Deciding not to meddle with Sunder just yet, he dashed out of his room. He needed to be far stronger before he could handle such power safely. But if combinations were the key to a new form of magic, he'd just discovered a master key. He realized he had left his door open. Reminding himself to lock it next time, he recalled an incident with a face stealer, chuckling to himself. He finally arrived at the classroom, where Isabel greeted him with her usual bluntness. "You're late," she said. I know. I'm sorry," Noah replied. "You said you wouldn't be late," Isabel pointed out. "Actually, I said being late was my job. But I'm here now, so it's all good," Noah responded with a grin. Todd jumped in with some questions. So, what's the lesson plan for today? Imbuement? Potential combinations? The meaning of life? Noah shook his head, amused. I'm afraid not, Todd. Nothing so grand. Today, I was actually thinking we'd go on a little field trip. At the training grounds, Todd looked around in disbelief. He couldn't believe that this is where he really brought them. Isabel voiced her frustration, pointing out that Noah didn't even know the answers to his own questions. How could he possibly train them? But Noah clarified with a smirk that he wouldn't be doing anything here. They would be sparring against each other. Todd rolled his eyes, convinced that Noah was once again dodging his responsibilities. Isabel, however, seized the opportunity to taunt Todd, suggesting that he was just scared he'd lose again. Angered, Todd shot back, reminding her that their last match had ended in a tie. Isabel responded coolly, saying that he should have no trouble tying her again. Noah watched their exchange with satisfaction, cheering them on with a grin. Yeah, that's the spirit. At the training grounds, Noah and his students prepared for sparring, each wearing a shield badge designed to create a protective barrier against magical attacks. These modified badges, however, only functioned within the training grounds. Todd, full of confidence, asked Isabel if she was ready to handle the intensity. She smirked, replying that the biggest threat he posed was burning their dinner again. Todd shot back that she looked like dinner, but Isabel dismissed his remark as lame, telling him to save his banter for when Vermil wasn't around. Annoyed, Todd urged her to get started already. As Noah watched from the sidelines, he observed the rings on Todd's fingers. They were generating fire. He realized Todd had cleverly found a way to bypass the limitations of his fire rune by using those rings. Meanwhile, Isabel activated her rune, and an energy sword began to form from her chest. Noah was both impressed and bewildered. Plasma? What kind of rune was that? And how were they both using magic without displaying their runes? It made Noah wonder if he could do the same. Todd charged at Isabel, his attacks wild but powerful. Isabel blocked his strike, pushing him away. Noah couldn't help but be concerned about how intense the fight was becoming. He hoped they wouldn't injure each other. Isabel taunted Todd, telling him he had strength but no precision. Todd, eager to prove himself, launched a barrage of fireballs. Isabel dodged most but narrowly avoided one. Todd, determined, fired another, forcing Isabel to block, causing her sword to fly out of her hand. Noah thought this was the end of the match. Isabel leaped at Todd, charging with fierce determination. Noah watched her in confusion, wondering why she was still attacking. As she came closer, Todd realized the threat and reacted, cursing under his breath. She seized the opportunity, declaring that he was wide open, and conjured another sword, which caught Noah by surprise. Todd managed to block Isabel's strike, though her attack slammed forcefully into his shield badge, making it gleam. He noticed the intense look in her eyes, something he had seen before, and the shield began to crack under the pressure. With frustration, he fell to the ground as the shield shattered. Standing over him, Isabel challenged Todd, questioning if he'd call this a tie too. Todd responded with irritation, admitting his dislike for her magic. He started to explain, hinting that her win was due to something else but trailed off, insisting he almost had her since she had dropped her sword. Isabel retorted that she dropped it on purpose, and Todd replied skeptically. They continued their back and forth, each challenging the other's claim, their frustration evident as they faced each other. Noah cleared his throat, breaking the tension, and they both turned on him, demanding to know what he wanted. Noah applauded them, expressing surprise, as he'd assumed from their comments about Vermil's teachings that they could barely cast magic. He realized his concerns about their readiness for the exam might have been unnecessary. As Todd hesitated, trying to ask about the exam, Isabel cut him off, getting straight to the point. She demanded to know if Noah was seriously going to make them take it. Noah questioned her response, asking how they intended to pass without taking the exam. Isabel's frustration spilled over as she reminded him of their previous agreement, pointing out that he had only started teaching them properly a week ago. She added that they had an agreement. They were supposed to get a free pass if they brought Noah what he asked for. Noah, now realizing how corrupt Vermil had been, silently cursed him for making such a deal. He told them that plans had changed, and they would indeed have to take the exam. Todd and Isabel protested, panicking at the thought of being killed in the test. Noah asked them to remind him what the exam was. Todd looked incredulous. "You don't even know?" he asked. Isabel chimed in, explaining that they had to kill a slasher, a deadly and fast creature that would tear them apart if they weren't careful. Noah processed this, but instead of showing concern, he shrugged it off. He told them that if they fought the slasher the way they had sparred, they'd have no trouble. Slashers, while fast, were predictable in their movements. Isabel, disbelieving, snapped back that it was easy for Noah to say since he wasn't the one who had to do the fighting. Todd, equally skeptical, accused Noah of having likely cheated his way through the exam, just like they were trying to do now. In response, Noah revealed that he had killed many slashers on his own, causing the two students to pause, taken aback by the claim. Todd remained doubtful. Isabel chimed in, sarcastically suggesting that the only way Noah could have faced a slasher was if it had been restrained for him by his family. Internally, Noah lamented the loss of respect from his students but resolved not to let them down, even if it was Vermil who had originally failed them. Noah then announced that he had made up his mind. They would train for the next few weeks. If, by the time of the exam, they still lacked confidence, he would allow them to cheat without requiring any bribe. This decision surprised both students, especially when Isabel agreed to it, catching Todd off guard. When Todd questioned her, Isabel explained that they had little choice. If they ever hoped to become stronger or perhaps even to kill, then they had to stop relying on cheating. Noah, taken aback by Isabel's slip, wondered aloud if he had heard her correctly. Isabel, undeterred, gave him an ultimatum. He had until the exam to convince them. If he failed, they would walk away. She warned him not to get too pleased with himself, as she still considered him an awful professor. Noah, surprisingly, agreed with her sentiment. Several hours later, Noah was in the Scorched Acres, taking down a slasher with ease. He had killed 3 in a row, and he was getting used to using his magic without having to visibly activate his runes. He realized he just had to imagine the runes in his head, which was incredibly convenient. He reflected on how easy it had become to kill slashers. Once you learned their patterns, they couldn't surprise you anymore. He mused that maybe there was a drill sergeant monkey somewhere training them all to fight the same way. Suddenly, a rock slammed into Noah's head, sending him flying backward. His body hit the ground hard. From the shadows, a monkey emerged, looking toward Noah's fallen body with predatory intent. The creature approached, licking Noah's body before starting to eat him. Noah's hand, now in spirit form, rose from his body. His spirit was cracked, his form in agony as he floated up. He screamed in pain, wondering what was happening. His thoughts raced. I'm already dead, so why does it still hurt so much?